come to you this morning, gather here together, Lord, to gather the precious manna, Lord, that you've been giving us every morning. Father, we just want to thank you for the opportunity that you're giving us, each one of us, Lord, to be present here. Help us, Lord, each one of us to understand the blessing that we have to be able to partake of the school of the prophets. We ask that you pour out your Holy Spirit upon us in your grace, that you enlighten the speaker, Lord, that you help us find, Lord, to understand the subjects that are being brought here to view, Lord, that we may be able to stand in the day of the Lord. We thank you for each precious soul here present. We ask that you be with their family, with their loved ones. Please be with the school. Please bless it, the teachers, the staff. And help us, Lord, to remember that every moment that is given, it's on borrowed time, and we ought to get ready faster. We thank you, Lord, for everything, and we ask all of this in Jesus' name and for his glory. Amen.
I want to start before we go back to 17, giving you a little bit of an overview of where we're going. There's certain, in order to deal with Ezekiel 21, when we get to Ezekiel 21, we're going to deal with the fact that the crown was removed from Zedekiah and passed to Babylon. And then it's overthrown, Medo-Persia is overthrown, Greece is overthrown until you get to Rome. So we're going to understand now that these four kingdoms are illustrated in the last four kingdoms. We get 8 kingdoms in Revelation 17. Of course, pioneers say it's 4 kingdoms, but as the book of Daniel expands, you can see that it was actually 5 kingdoms, and by the time you get into Revelation 12 and 13, it's clear that that first beast is pagan Rome, the leopard-like beast is papal Rome, the earth beast is the United States. So Revelation 12 and 13 is letting us know there's 6 kingdoms. By the time you get to Revelation 17, you can see 8 kingdoms, but they all have to be analyzed by context. When 4 kingdoms are being illustrated, there's information. When 5 kingdoms are being illustrated, there's other information. So by context, you have to take each one of those truths about the kingdoms and put them in their place. But when you're doing Ezekiel 21, we find that Zedekiah's crown's overthrown here to begin the sequence of 3 being overthrown until he whose right is come. So and this is what we intend to do, if we're going to show that Babylon is typifying papal Rome, which is the 5th kingdom, but is the first of the last 4, okay, then before papal Rome, which has been typified by Babylon, you have to have a kingdom marked that has been typified by Zedekiah and Israel. There has to be a kingdom that precedes papal Rome that fulfills that prophetic characteristic of the crown being removed from it and given to papal Rome, who's overthrown, and then the United States, who's overthrown, and then Greece, the United Nations, who's overthrown, to get to this kingdom, modern Babylon, where he whose right it is come. So one study that we'll do, we're not doing it now, but on our process of going through this, is we're going to show, and this is a matter of public record for a long time, that the 7 churches of Revelation, Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, according to correct pioneer understanding, these 7 churches in Revelation run parallel with the 7 seals, 1 seal, 2 seal, 3 seal, 4 seal. Now, there's a 4-3 combination. The last 3 seals they have a different lesson than the progressive nature, but still, this is the churches. You have to see this. This is the seals in order to provide the prophetic argument to show what kingdom passes the crown to papal Rome in this sequence of 8 kingdoms. Okay, this 4-3 combination in the seals and the churches, you have 2 witnesses because you also have in Revelation 7 trumpets. Okay, and the last 3 trumpets are 3 woes. Okay, the first 4 seals are associated with beasts. The last 3 seals are not. the first four churches at one level, certainly Christian history, but the Millerites understood that in their history, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea were all active. Okay, so they're like three simultaneous churches. The last three seals have no beast associated with them, so there's a distinction between the last three seals and the first four seals. And there's a distinction between the last three trumpets and the first four trumpets, because they're four trumpets followed by three woes. Okay, so you have to deal with that logic, but while you're doing so, you understand that still at one level, because symbols can have more than one meaning, that this is sequential from 1 to 7. Okay, and after you put that in place, then you can go back. This is the Christian church, and you can show that the Hebrew, if that's the way to express it best, the Hebrew church or the Jewish church, it has this same history. It goes through the same sequence of 7 churches and 7 seals. And you need to see that, because you'll find the time of Moses is the Ephesus church period for ancient Israel. The time of the judges is Smyrna, and the time of the kings from Saul to Zedekiah is Pergamus, and the time of Thyatira is the captivity of 70 years. Okay? And this is one of the keys that allows you to see this, because Sister White says this captivity of 70 years parallels the 1260-year captivity of Thyatira. And in the book of Revelation, when you get to the 5th seal, the martyrs under the throne ask the question, how long until you judge the papacy, who has just committed this persecution for 1260 years? So in the 5th seal, you see the martyrs asking the question, how long? And how long is a symbol in the scriptures. But in Zechariah chapter 1, immediately after the 70 years, you see Zechariah or the angel, one of them, it's expressed there, how long until you have mercy upon Jerusalem that's been in captivity for 70 years. That's my paraphrase. So you've got a how long here, this is how long, and a how long here that allows you to tie these histories together. And what I'm saying is that the 7 churches of Revelation are not simply typifying the history of the Christian church, they also typify the history of the Hebrew church. Okay? And there's all kinds of important revelations that you can draw out of this particular study, but you have to put this study in place. I'm not doing it now. I'm just giving you an overview of the process, the logic that we're going to go through as we come out of Revelation 17 and plug it into Ezekiel 21. But what you have to have this in place, I believe, because once you see that right here at the end of Pergamus is also the end of the kings, then you can show that Zedekiah's crown being removed and given to Babylon was typified by Pergamus coming to its end. Constantine would be the symbol of that history, but he doesn't cover that entire history. But Constantine's crown being removed and given to the papacy. So you need to put that in place so that you have the starting point here. This is Zedekiah's crown being removed, given to Babylon. But when you're going to lay out the final 4 kingdoms, you want to be able to see that Pergamus's crown is removed and given to the papacy. So it's square. So we will want to cover this piece of information as we go through this study. And then when you get down, and this board really isn't big enough to do what I want to do here, but when you get down to where you're pulling these things together, you're going to want to show the history of Babylon as the first kingdom. This is Babylon. The Medes and the Persians as the second kingdom. Greece as the first. second, third. Pagan Rome. As the fourth. And then Papal Rome. And this is where it gets hard to illustrate as the fifth. The United States as the sixth. The UN is the seventh, and of course the UN is not going to be there that long. But the USA, this history here should be expanded, because if you're going to do justice to this history, then you're going to have to bring in the two 2520s, okay? And you're going to have to show how they come into the beginning of the history of the United States, and that you have the Millerite reform line down here and our reform line down here, because you're going to want to take time to show the horn of Protestantism conquered here and the horn of republicanism conquered here. And you're going to want to come back into this history back here of 742, 723, and 677 to have the beginning of the prophecy that's going to impact here and illustrate the end of the United States. You want to have, I don't know if you have to have, you want to have, this is modern Rome, these in place too, so you can see the first four kingdoms and the last four kingdoms in reference to Revelation 17. So we're going to do Revelation 17 today like I had it on the board the other day. We're going to do it. This is how I've always illustrated, but when we got to Ezekiel 21, Noel laid it out this way in order to illustrate the impact of the 2520s. And you can see that's the way to do it when you're dealing with Ezekiel 21. But first we'll put this in place. And then once we have understanding of this, then we're prepared to lay it this way and bring these other lines in. So that's the things we have to put in place as we move through this, and probably a lot of lessons that you could derive from it. But what we're trying to do is show that if we mess up the pioneer understanding that Rome is the fourth kingdom here, and it can be treated simply as the fourth kingdom, if we mess that up, we destroy our ability to have the template to see that it's typifying the last four. Okay, so that's the purpose of what we're doing here. But you want to have this in place to see that Constantine was typified by Zedekiah, and I'm saying Constantine in a symbolic sense, all right, Pergamus. And you want to have Revelation 17 in place. Then you want to put in place the 2520s, and then there's one other thing. In here, there's probably more than one other thing. You want to have Isaiah 23 in here. Okay, because this is when Rome's forgotten, and there's significance of that history in the sixth kingdom that needs to be factored into this if you're going to deal with Ezekiel 21. Pardon me?
Why do you have the 5 blank?
Why do I have the 5 blank? This is, I'm not being technical here, I'm just walking through it in my head, so I just left it blank because I never thought about it. Should we go back to Revelation 17? Everyone remember where we were at in our thoughts anyway. Brother Henry, where were we at? I liked Brother Henry finally got a little bit animated. He got interactive yesterday, and I'm going to keep him on task. Where were we yesterday? You're going to look for the verse. I was thinking for the point of discussion that we were at. Okay, Jonathan wants the answer for you.
We end up in verse 8, and we were talking on wandering of John?
No, that was what Tyler and some others were leading us to, but we weren't wanting to spend a great deal of time on the wondering, so don't reintroduce that.
Yeah, but there we ended up. Yeah.
Okay, so where did we start? If you know the ending, what was the beginning? Revelation 16. Is that where we started? Everyone thinks that, huh? Okay, Ariane, where did we start?
13.
Revelation 13. You're almost there. Take one more step backwards.
Daniel 7. Daniel 8. Wait.
Oh, yeah, you could include the beasts. We dealt with the beasts, that there's 4 beasts. Daniel 7, Revelation 12, 13, and 17.
And then Revelation 12.
Yes.
And then Revelation 13.
Yep. And then Revelation 17. And all the beasts are Rome. So the beasts we're dealing with here in verse 8, it's got to be Rome on 3 other witnesses. But where I was thinking is the structure. Okay, you have the identical structure in Daniel 11, 40 to 45 that you have in Revelation 13, 11 through the end of the chapter. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that every time anymore. 11 through 18. And you have the same structure in Revelation 17. And what is the story of Daniel 11? Of the beast. What's the story of Revelation 13? And 17 is the dragon. And what about the Battle of Carchemish? You can see the beast, dragon, and false prophet in that story too, because why? What is Carchemish an illustration of? Daniel 11 verse 40. Okay, so in Daniel 11 verse 40, can you see the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet? Who are they? In verse 40, who are they? Yeah, you're naming, but who are they? Who's the south? The south is the dragon. Who's the king of the north? Where's the false prophet? Chariot, ships, and horsemen. So they're all there. They're all there in the story of Carchemish. And I'm contending that the story, his own vision is the story about how these 3 entities lead the world to Armageddon. And once in Parminder's class, when he was dealing with Carchemish, he mentioned the book Keys of This Blood by Malachi Martin. How many have read that book? It was written before the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the premise of the book, he says it right in the front, and he builds upon the premise all the way through, is that at that time, before 1989, before the Soviet Union collapsed, he says, the world, he doesn't say it this way, but he says this, the world may not realize it, but they're now in a 3-way struggle for taking over the world. And the struggle's going on between the Soviet Union, the United States, and the papacy. And he says the papacy's going to win. Okay, and sure enough, the Soviet Union's been swept away. Now there's a struggle, even though people don't realize it, of the papacy getting ready to take control of the United States, Sunday law. So those dynamics are in that verse. It has been typified in Carchemish, and I'm saying that that's the story of those 3 powers are illustrated in Revelation 16, and there is a warning in there that is saying that we must understand the movements of the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet before, in advance, not only to be prepared for ourselves, but if you're going to give a message of warning, you have to know what the message is to give to people in order for them to be warned. Okay, so we got to understand it before probation closes. So all of this was in that context, and then we started working through the fact that John was carried to 1798, which is the starting point for the prophecy of Daniel 11, 40 to 45, and the starting point for the prophecy of Revelation 13. So this is the anchor that allows you to tie these 3 prophecies together, Revelation 17. And John is in the wilderness, and he's at the end of the wilderness because the persecution has ceased, and some of the Protestant churches are already, ceasing to follow the increasing light of the Protestant Reformation and have become the daughters of Rome, which is exactly what the Millerites called the Protestant churches during the second angel's message when they refused to accept that light. So it's based upon the rejection of light. So then we dealt with the mystery. A mystery, everything that's revealed about a biblical mystery you are required to understand, but it's beyond our understanding to actually understand all of it. So this would be true also of the mystery of the beast and the woman. And the problem that I pointed out in there is that when you look at it closely, this woman that's riding upon the beast is the papacy, and the beast is the papacy. So how are they riding upon themselves? And it's describing two different aspects of the papacy, of course, because it's prophecy. But we went through verse 8. The beast that was is the papal beast that existed before 1798. She's forgotten from 1798 until the Sunday law in the United States, and then she's going to ascend. Isn't that what it says? They're going to ascend? When does she ascend? I just said it, but when does she? Nope, she's forgotten in 1798 at the Sunday law. So note that, if it's important for you to see. At the Sunday law, the papacy ascends to the throne of the earth. Okay, is there any other ascension going on at that time? The ensign. So you got two things being lifted up at the same point, the same prophetic period. And
that would be the real fulfillment of the everlasting.
Yeah, but it's the test for the world, is they're going to choose between what? Barabbas and Christ. The Sunday law you can show is the cross. So now the world is going to choose between Christ and Barabbas. And hopefully we'll get to a little bit more of that. Because that's also illustrated in the story of Elijah. Okay. In verse 13 of Revelation 13, let's read that. After the Sunday law in Revelation 13:11, it takes place when the United States speaks, and then 2 verses later it says, "And he doeth great wonders," and the subject there you can say is the United States. The United States doeth great wonders, so that he make fire come down from heaven on the earth inside of men. So I'm saying at one level this is the United States, but in the great controversy, Sister White uses this verse and applies it to Satan when he personates Christ. So is it acceptable that this verse could represent both the United States and Satan at the same time? All you have to do is remember chapter 13, where Sister White says the dragon represents Satan, but in a secondary sense it represents pagan Rome. So this is totally acceptable at the prophetic level. But what I want you to see is that after the Sunday law in verse 11, then Satan appears to personate Christ. Okay, so the world now is choosing between Christ and Barabbas. Barabbas is Satan personating Christ. Who is Christ? The 144,000. This is the choice that's being made. Okay, so what biblical history illustrates that?
Isaiah 23.
Elijah. Okay, the one I'm looking for is Elijah. And the reason I'm saying that is we all know that Carmel, where this choice between the prophets of Baal and Elijah as either the true or false prophet, does it take place after the Sunday law or before the Sunday law? Because I just told you that this judgment between Barabbas and Christ after the Sunday law is the story of Elijah, but don't we teach that that takes place before the Sunday law? Yep. So how can we justify that if it is correct?
Mount Carmel is the midnight cry, and the Sunday law is also the midnight cry.
Fractals. Fractals, okay. Yes, okay, so this is where we're at. Verse 8, Revelation 17, the beast that thou sawest was, that's 538 to 1798, and is not, that's her being forgotten as the days of one king for 70 years. The history of the United States, she shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. We didn't touch on this. What's the bottomless pit symbolize? It's in your notes, I'm sure. I just passed over it. What's the bottomless pit symbolize? This is important to understand.
Satanic manifestation.
A new manifestation of satanic power. Why is it important to be correct about this symbol? You may not know. I'll tell you why it's important to be correct. Is because if you go to Revelation 11, verse 7. You want to read that, Brother Tabo? Revelation 11, verse 7.
Revelation 11, verse 7. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them, and kill them.
What beast is that? Atheistic France. And Sister White directly says that's atheistic France in the Great Controversy, page 269. So when the theologians of Adventism and others in Adventism come to Revelation 17, and they see this beast of verse 8 comes out of the bottomless pit, they argue that this must be atheistic France, because Sister White says in Revelation 11, verse 8, that the beast that comes out of the bottomless pit there is atheistic France. So they assume that the bottomless pit always represents atheistic France. Is that so? What's the easiest way to blow that out of the water? Revelation 9, verse 2, isn't it? Revelation 9:2. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit. So the bottomless pit is representing some kind of symbol that can be associated with various beasts. And that's why when Sister White says that hypnotism, which she called mesmerism, came from the devil, from the bottomless pit, it's a satanic power, hypnotism. And then the quote, pardon me? Islam's a satanic power. Atheism in France was a satanic power. And the bottomless pit in Revelation 17 is associated with the papacy, which is a satanic power. That's why when Sister White says the bottomless pit represents a new manifestation of satanic power, it can apply to each of those three manifestations of satanic power that are found in the book of Revelation. So, Brother Kolef, what are those three powers that come out of the bottomless pit in the book of Revelation?
Islam, atheism, and papalism.
Islam, atheism, and papalism. What is that? Kinda, not quite. What do you put in Islam in the threefold union for? Sister Kathy, can you explain yourself?
Me?
You said it weren't, didn't you?
Oh, I thought that's what he was saying.
Was that what? Okay, can you explain her?
That's not what I was saying.
Okay, so the threefold union is the beast, the papacy, the dragon. Is the dragon atheism? Okay, so the dragon could be atheism in Revelation 11. But what's the third entity there? The false prophet. Who's the false prophet?
Muhammad.
Muhammad. You're going to say Muhammad. Okay, I thought the false prophet was the United States. So it's worth noting that when it comes to the bottomless pit powers, they are representing a different type of threefold union. They're three powers, but they're also the false prophet, the dragon, and the beast. Okay, but that's not the one in Revelation 16. The false prophet in Revelation 16 is United States. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Go ahead.
For the sake of argument here, what is the difference then with the bottomless pit that's found in Revelation 20, verse 3? How can we compare that with the other bottomless
It too is associated with Satan. He is. No, in Revelation 20.
verse 3.
And tell us about the bottomless pit in Revelation 20. Now, and remember that the primary definition that I'm pointing to for the bottomless pit is that it's a new manifestation of a satanic power. So tell us about the bottomless pit in Revelation 20. What does that represent?
Right here it says it's a state of confusion and darkness.
Yeah. I know all those, but I'm using the one that I want to use. That it's a new manifestation of satanic power, and satanic power is always confusion and darkness. So tell us about Revelation 20.
Well, I mean, Revelation 20, verse 3, it just says here that he cast him, that is in reference to Satan, into the bottomless pit and shut him up there, with a seal.
For how long?
Well, that would be for 1,000 years.
Okay, so what happens at the end of the 1,000 years?
Then he's released.
And what does he do?
Well, then again, he has power again to deceive again for a short period of time.
Okay, so this is the last manifestation of satanic power that you just referenced, right? It's the final war at the end of the 1,000 years. And he comes out of the bottomless pit, and it's a new manifestation of satanic power, because now he's going to take all the resurrected wicked from all of the 6,000 years and put together an army. So even there, the bottomless pit is identifying that at the end of that 1,000 years, there is the new manifestation of satanic power.
Did not the pioneers have the idea that the bottomless pit had a representation to that of the earth?
Yeah, you're looking for geography, which is probably there in all of them as well.
So you have a prophetic and then also a geographical location for it, or how does that actually work?
Well, you see in verse 9 of Revelation 17 that even though this is all symbolic language, that she sits upon the seven-hilled city of Rome, and the pioneer understanding was this is representing the city of Rome. But we know that symbols have that more than one meaning, so it does have a literal geographical setting. And when the beast of Islam comes out of the bottomless pit, we know the pioneers also mark for us that this is Arabia, because one of the words for the desert there is bottomless pit. Okay, so you got symbolism and geography going on at the same time, and of course, the beast of Revelation 11:7 is France. There's a geography associated with it, but the primary application of the symbol, it's a new manifestation of a satanic power, and even in the 1,000-year millennium, it's addressing the fact that the last manifestation of satanic power will be a new manifestation of satanic power. Because what does he raise up there? Who primarily in Revelation 12, who's primarily associated with the dragon? Pagan Rome. And what's pagan Rome typifying at the end of the world?
Usually.
What?
More than one thing, but usually or the dragon or UN.
The United Nations. Okay, so at the end of the 1,000 years, there's going to be another manifestation of the United Nations. But it's different. Because all the nations that have died in a lost condition are resurrected. They are the United Nations under this new manifestation of satanic power that comes out of the bottomless pit at the end of the 1,000 years. So what I'm saying is, if you use the primary definition of what Sister White says, where is that on our notes? I'm sure it's
3 on the top.
page 3 on the top. State of confusion and darkness is the first quote from Great Controversy 658, but the one that I'm putting all the weight on is the one from 268, the last sentence. But here is brought to view a new manifestation of satanic power. You can see it, that's the top of page 3. You can see it in all the bottomless pits in Revelation. And this beast of verse 8, he is going into perdition, and the man of sin in verse 3 of 2 Thessalonians is the son of perdition. And all the world's going to wander after him. We won't deal with that, but that's the papal beast in Revelation 13. It's passing by the wondering. And at the end of verse 8, it's the beast that was and is not. And I don't, my page is gone. What's the last part of that threefold description at the end of verse 8? And yet is. Okay. Yes.
I have a short question.
in the quote from Ellen White in Great Controversy, it says, a new manifestation of satanic power. Does this refer to the beast that ascendeth of the bottomless pit, or to the bottomless pit, or to both?
I'm saying the bottomless pit is not identifying the beast. It's identifying a new manifestation of satanic power. And when you use that definition of the bottomless pit, you will see that there's always a different beast that comes out of it. In Revelation 9:2, the beast that comes out of it is Islam. In Revelation 11:7, it's atheistic France. 17:8, it's modern Rome. At the end of the 1,000 years, it's Satan's last stand. Everyone with me on that? Okay, let's read verse 9 of Revelation 17. And that would be Ariam.
And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth.
What does William Miller define mountains as? Kingdoms. So this woman has set upon 7 kingdoms, if you're going to address this symbol at that level. What does it mean that a power is seated? It reigns, it's in control. So what does that tell you about this woman of Revelation 17?
False marriage.
Pardon me?
False marriage.
False marriage, okay, perhaps, but the fact that she's seated on 7 mountains, and Miller says 7 mountains or 7 kingdoms, what would be the 7 kingdoms that we would see in Daniel and Revelation? Because they're the same book, they're not going to disagree. What kingdoms did she set on? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, papal Rome, the United States, the United Nations. Okay.
So those 7 kingdoms are not verse then, what she sits on?
Miller says mountains are kingdoms. So yeah, this is telling us, what is this telling us? This is telling us something that I referred to yesterday about the progressive theme in Daniel 2 and Daniel 8. If you don't see the progressive theme, you can't see the progression in Revelation 17. There is a progression that is marked in the kingdoms of Bible prophecy. So if this woman is seated upon all 7 kingdoms, they don't all exist simultaneously, right? They exist in sequential order. What does it tell you about this woman? She moves from one kingdom to another down through history.
Doesn't sort of like looking at Ezekiel 21.
Louder.
Looking at Ezekiel 21. And she's a composite beast. So it's kind of like the perfect. To me, it's answering the riddle, because it's kind of like the perfect fulfillment of the Babylon or the pagan religion. So you got the Babylonian, the worldlyism, philosophy with Greece, etc. So it kind of answers the riddle, how a beast can sit on a beast. If you following your example, this Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, 7 kings, and the papacy sits on all of them and takes all of their philosophies.
Yeah, well, the papacy may be taking all their philosophies, but what I think it's teaching is not that part of it. Is that whether we recognize or are willing to acknowledge it, she was the guiding influence of all these kingdoms. That's what the mystery of iniquity is. It's the work of Satan to take control of these kingdoms. And at one level, if you'll see it, what Revelation 17 is teaching in a very detailed fashion, it gives you the prophetic point of reference to understand this, is that the United States becomes the object lesson to understand how the papacy takes control of every kingdom as history progresses. Because the story of the United States in the scriptures, it's given you a detailed illustration of the work of the mystery of iniquity. Okay, the Protestants are holding to papal doctrines in 1798. Some of them have been overcome in the Reformation. But in 1798, the Protestants, they're coming to the climax of the Protestant Reformation. They still have to turn away from some wine of Babylon in order to be the remnant people of God. The Reformation is taking place. And in that history, you see the Protestant horn conquered. Okay, but the United States is not fully conquered. There's another horn that has to get conquered down here at the end, republicanism. So the history of the United States, at one level, is teaching us how the papacy got off the head of the papal beast in 1798 and began to ascend to take control of the sixth kingdom of Bible prophecy. But it's pretty detailed how she does it. Okay, first the one horn's conquered, then the other horn's conquered, and this is what Revelation 17, you got to see this to understand the relationship of the sixth, seventh, and eighth kingdom. It's the story about how this woman goes from head to head. And what on her forehead, what's her character? Mystery, Babylon the Great. So what's Babylon's mystery? Go back to the very beginning. What's Babylon's mystery? That's her character, right? Confusion. When does the confusion take place? The Tower of Babel. Okay. But what's the mystery that takes place at the Tower of Babel?
Confounding their languages.
Yeah. But that's part of the story of the Tower of Babel. But why does it become a mystery religion? That's the better question. Who was the leader of that religion?
Nimrod.
Was it a hidden religion when Nimrod was walking the earth?
No.
No, it was a bold, in-your-face religion. Okay, but what happened? Of course, we don't have this from inspiration. We have it from Alexander Hislop. What happened to Nimrod? Shem executes him. And Alexander Hislop, a couple hundred years ago, he had no idea of what we were going to be applying as end-time Bible prophecy. And as he marks that ancient history, what does he say that Shem does with Nimrod?
Cuts him
Cut him in pieces.
How many pieces?
12.
Really?
10.
10.
10, sorry.
10, okay. And what does Shem do with those 10 body parts?
Sends him out.
Sends them out where? To the world. Is 10 a symbol of the world?
World, yes.
Okay, so what message is conveyed with those 10 body parts? If you worship like Nimrod, you're going to die like Nimrod. So when the people of the tower spread around the earth after it all comes crashing down and their languages are changed, is their religion that they retained a bold, in-your-face religion? No, it goes underground. It becomes a mystery religion, a secretive religion. And it accomplishes its goals in a mysterious way. Okay, this is Mystery Babylon. What's its goal? To build a one world government, to build a tower to heaven. That's the purpose, that's its intent. But in order to do it, it's gonna take control of every kingdom that comes into human history, and it's going to do it through what Sister White calls the mystery of iniquity, this progressive conquering through false ideas, and ultimately to take control of the political leadership of the kingdoms. So when she's sitting on 7 mountains, you know those mountains don't exist at the same time. It is telling you that she moves from one kingdom to another down through history. But the kingdom that gives us the really clear object lesson of how she conquers a kingdom is the United States. Wait a second.
I just want to kind of go back just a little bit, if I could, because we're talking about Babylon here, mother of harlots, and it says, and abominations of the earth. And yesterday you had talked about the difference between the transgression of desolation and the abomination of desolation. And the abomination of desolation was the mark of the beast. So then when it's talking about abominations, would that then be like different false religions, or how would you actually define that?
What is the mark of the beast?
The mark of the beast is something that the beast emphasizes. Which
No, I mean, what is the mark of the beast?
Sabbath issue or the Sunday law.
Sunday law, okay, and the Sunday law is a false doctrine, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the papacy has many false doctrines. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is the premier false doctrine of the papacy? We just answered it. Sunday. Okay, that's the mark of her authority. That's the symbol of her worship. So there's many false doctrines, and they're all abominations. But the supreme one is Sunday sacredness.
So then even when it comes towards that of Babylon, then that which is idolatry or Sunday worship would be then the key for that time period. Because she's riding from Babylon going down through all nations, right?
How does she capture the nations? In verse 1 of Revelation 17. Verses 1 and 2. How does she capture the nations? Through her wine, isn't it?
Sure.
And what's her wine?
Being false doctrine.
False doctrines. What's her premier false doctrine? Sunday sacredness. But there are, and that's the in Daniel's terminology, that is the abomination that maketh desolate. That's the premier doctrine that marks who and what she is. But there's all kinds of various false doctrines of Rome. So they're the abominations of the earth, immortality of the soul, that a human being can be your intercessor, on and on.
So we're beginning to see the Pope doing that now over the last few years. Are we in the beginning stages of the image of the beast being set up? Because they're definitely alluding towards this Sunday law.
Yeah, there has to be advanced work. Okay, we understand now that the image of the beast test that comes to the United States in advance of the image of the beast test that comes to the world after the Sunday law in the United States, that it starts here when there's going to be an initial Sunday law passed in the United States, but it won't be the Sunday law that fulfills Revelation 13:11. There'll be an escalation of them. So then the image of the beast test starts in the United States. But long before that, you have to have things happen in the United States that would allow that to take place. And they're happening, and so too in the world. For instance, when this last Supreme Court judge got put in the Supreme Court and became the head judge, what do they call him? The top judge? Yeah, but there's a name for the top judge. Anyway, John Roberts didn't just get put into the Supreme Court. He was elected as I can't believe that. But I'm not feeling bad about it because there's a lot of other Chief Justice. There you go. There's a lot of other Americans in here that should know that the Chief Justice is the head justice. Okay, but when he got there, what happened to the Supreme Court? For the first time in history, became a majority of Catholics. Okay, so that had to happen, in order for when the Sunday laws hit and there are going to be people protesting, you got to have a Supreme Court that's going to rule in favor of the papacy. That's in place. That's been in place for quite some time. You have to have a citizenry in the United States that is frustrated and angry and willing to allow the politicians to go the direction of the Sunday law. You have to have what you have exactly today in the United States. Sister White says the citizens of the United States are going to push their legislators for a Sunday law because they're going to want to return to temporal prosperity. So you're going to have an economic crisis. That seems to be happening right now. Okay, so all these things happen in advance of that first Sunday law that marks the beginning of the image of the beast and leads to the Sunday law that marks the beginning of the image of the beast test for the world. So there's things that have went on in the world in advance of all this. What went on in the world in 1946 that had to take place in advance of all this? The United Nations. You got to have a world government in place before the United States can implement a world government. So yeah, it's all going on. But did we finish your thought? Okay, so I point to Arian and Maya's discussion, but it's a common discussion that initially he was seeing the 7 heads in Revelation 13 as exclusively the 7 kingdoms of Bible prophecy, and they are. I wasn't arguing with him on that, but I was saying they had a secondary meaning, okay? But the easy way to see that, we've looked at in Revelation 12. Sister White says the dragon of Revelation 12 is Satan, but in a secondary sense, it is pagan Rome. And this is an agreement with William Miller's rules. Symbols can have more than one meaning, and you're going to define them by context. So, this woman is who? In Revelation 17, who's the woman? Papacy. She's seated upon how many mountains? Okay, and I'm saying that those, according to William Miller, mountains are kingdoms. She has set upon every one, she's guided every one of these kingdoms down through history. Okay, because this is the mystery religion, this is Satan's religion. Everyone with me on that? Okay, let's go to...
Just one quick question again. I mean, even if we're kind of going back again to, say, Babylon, Medo-Persia, where can we actually see the woman being seated there, or where can we see it?
Well, to me, the one that you can see easiest, and I haven't ever tried to go back in and document the mystery religion's influence in Medo-Persian Greece, although I'm positive it's there, and I'm positive it can be documented. But the easy one is Babylon. You got the Chaldeans. Okay, the Chaldeans, when Babylon fell, historians tell us that they fled to Pergamus. Okay, in Pergamus they set up that religion again. Okay, so that after Babylon, that becomes the heart of Satan's religion. And when Rome's conquering the world, they conquer Pergamus, and they take that religion right into the Pantheon temple. So you can document from the scriptures this movement of the Chaldean religion from Babylon to Pergamus to Rome. But in terms of philosophically understanding it, Arian and I had a discussion yesterday or the day before, because he sees these kingdoms because they are beasts. You can look at them as their political manifestation. So he was wondering why I would hang the word pagan Rome on the political structure of Rome. And what I went to with him is Daniel 8:13. Daniel 8:13 begins, the question that's raised in Daniel 8:13 is, how long shall be the Hazon vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? So after the first 12 verses of Daniel 8, then Daniel hears this heavenly question, and the question is what is the duration of this vision of prophetic history that describes how paganism and papalism trample down the sanctuary and the host? So this prophetic vision begins with the Medes and the Persians, and it goes all the way through the papacy. And until the papacy, in this history, these kingdoms are doing what? Trampling down the sanctuary and the host. But what are they called? They're called the daily. And the daily is paganism. This is paganism at one level all the way through. It's real easy to show how Babylon is the religion of paganism. All the religions, without getting any historical documentation, if you understand the question of verse 13 correctly, it's telling you that the religion of all of this is paganism, even though it doesn't start with the Babylonians. So the pagan religion is the religion of Satan, and the religion of Satan, if you type into Sister White's writing, she talks about it being the synagogue of Satan. The synagogue of Satan is the mystery of iniquity, and it moves down through every kingdom of Bible prophecy. And the process of how this mystery religion takes control of a government is the story of the United States. That's where you really get it detailed. So she's coming down through each of these kingdoms. But let's go to Isaiah 4. Yep, sorry.
I don't know, a while back you described the different facets of paganism, papalism, and modern Rome. And I remember you said that paganism is something that is bold in your face, a religion that you know where it's coming from. That papacy, when it comes in, it's under a mask, but you know that it's there, hidden. But when modern Rome comes into picture, you don't know where it's coming from. It's completely hidden. Is that what you were describing earlier too?
I know people teach that way, and I don't have a problem with that. I understand it, but I don't teach it that way. Someone else in this message teaches it that way, but I agree with it. Okay, paganism was open, but papalism hides the paganism by calling it a Christian church, which it isn't. Okay, but the real paganism is going to be manifested when a so-called Protestant nation professes to still be Protestant when they are really Catholic, which means they are really pagan. Okay, that's what I was saying the other day about the progression in Daniel 8 with the Gadol. Each of these kingdoms waxes greater and greater and greater, and even though the United States isn't addressed in Daniel 8, you know from the progression that when you get to the sixth kingdom, the United States, the greatest Gadol, self-exaltation of all time, takes place in the United States, and it's because they're saying, we are Protestants, we protest Rome, when really they're being governed and guided by Rome. But the religion of Rome in Revelation 13, if you worship that leopard-like beast, you're worshiping the dragon. And the dragon is pagan Rome, or it's paganism. Okay, so you got to see the progression to get these ideas. But it's someone else that expresses it that way, but I agree with it. I don't know who teaches it like that. But so Isaiah 4. Whoa, I'm sorry, I thought we were going to be much further along. And this is all my fault. Have you read, Brother Koloff? Okay, your turn. Isaiah 4, verse 1 and 2.
And in that day 7 women...
Okay, Brother Koloff. What day?
The Sunday law.
Oh, really? That may be right, but okay, so how are you going to answer that? Grammatically, what does that tell you? And in that day.
I've got to go back.
Okay, where do you go back to define that day?
What was happening previously?
You go back to chapter 2.
Yeah.
Go back to chapter 2. And this is the beginning of this prophecy. And now read verses 1 and 2 before you come back to chapter 4, verses 1 and 2.
The word of Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it.
Okay, so when does that take place?
Last days.
Last days, but when does it take place?
Loud cry.
Loud cry, okay. Is that, don't we know better than that now? The midnight cry is when this starts happening, right? The loud cry, the Sunday law, that's when the ensign's lifted up. But the actual lifting up of this mountain begins back at the midnight cry. Because between the midnight cry and the loud cry, between the midnight cry and the Sunday law, the nations start getting acquainted with the issues that's going to allow them to respond to the Sunday law crisis when it arrives. So what's the mountain here in verse 2? Okay, this is the glorious holy mountain. Now go to verse 1 of chapter 4.
And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying... Okay,
so what's a woman?
Church.
How many women are there here? So, is a woman a mountain? We've been operating on Miller's rule that this woman in Revelation 17 that sits upon 7 mountains is sitting upon 7 kingdoms. Can a mountain also be a church? Okay, so those are interchangeable terms that need to be defined by context. What's it mean that there are 7 women here?
7, all the churches.
All the churches. In this time period, what time period?
In the last days.
Okay, the last days. In this time period, what time period? The midnight cry of the Sunday law, what's happening with all the churches on planet Earth? They're going to take hold of... what man are they going to take hold of? The man of sin. Okay, and how can you prove that? Let's read the rest of the verse. After saying,
we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel, only let us be called by thy name, to take away our reproach.
Next verse.
In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel.
In fact, let's read verse 3 too, my brother.
And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem.
Okay, so what is that day? That's the Sunday law, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also the midnight cry. What is this referring to in terms of the church, God's church? This is the church triumphant. When it's holy, this is the church triumphant, and the church triumphant comes into history at the midnight cry, but more perfectly at the Sunday law. So the church triumphant is being contrasted here with all the churches of the world that are going to take hold of the papal man. And we know that because they're going to want to what? Eat their own... What's that? Doctrine. And they're going to do what? What's the apparel?
Righteousness.
Okay. But theirs is unrighteousness. And they want to be called by his name. What is his name? Sunday? Yeah. The Sunday law, you could say that it's identifying that. But I like his typical name. What's his typical name? What do we... Pardon me? Yeah. Bad question. Catholics. They're Catholics, aren't they? Universal. Let us be part of the universal church. And to take away our reproach. And if you run the reproach, you'll see that the reproach is something that comes at the Sunday law. This is why Seventh-day Adventists are going to accept the mark of the beast, is because they won't want to stand under the reproach of this persecution. They will not have prepared a character to stand. And these people are going to want to take away that persecution. This representative's approach. See a hand over there? No? Okay, so...
I just want to point out that the Seventh-day Adventists already changed their name to the World Church when they're addressing themselves.
Okay, so back to Revelation 17:9. I'm saying that not only does she set upon the seven-hilled city of Rome, as the pioneers understood it, that this is identifying a geographical place, and some people stumble over this because they say, okay, you're now applying a literal thing in something that we should be applying spiritually. But it is not a literal thing. It is literally the city of Rome, but the city of Rome is a prophetic symbol. It is the sanctuary of strength. When pagan Rome was in the city of Rome, it was invincible. Its invincibility ended when it moved to Constantinople. When papal Rome was in the city of Rome, it was invincible. When the Pope was taken out of the city of Rome in 1798, its invincibility was gone. Therefore, the fact that modern Rome is marked as being in the seven-hilled city of Rome is not making a literal application. It's using the symbol of what the city of Rome represents. When she's there, she's invincible, but she's also setting upon those seven hills to teach us that she moves from kingdom of all the kingdoms of Bible prophecy. The mystery of iniquity takes control of each kingdom that comes into history. But it's also telling us that in the Sunday law crisis, all the churches of the world come into unity with her.
There's something that one of the pioneers says. He says that there are seven heads, which are seven mountains, and then the seven kings. And he says that this is a transferring of the symbolism from one symbol to the next. And I was thinking of why this would be, and what you just said made sense to me in connection with how Parmenter expresses history, that this is a literal parable. You know, you have these seven hills, And this is a parable of her moving from kingdom to kingdom. And that's why the angel maybe connects that symbolism to help us get past the, our finite comprehension of it.
One other thing you might throw into the mix here, because we're not getting to the riddle at all, but in what two aspects exist in all the kingdoms of Bible prophecy? Church and state. So when she's sitting upon the mountains, what is she sitting upon? The kingdoms at one level, state, and the churches at another level, church and state. No, this is all about her. The internal is for God's people. You see that connection? The mountains are both the political and the religious. The 7 churches take hold of her hand. She captures the 7 kingdoms. The difference, the argument there would be, well, the 7 kingdoms is talking about the progression through history, and you're saying the 7 churches is here at the end of the world. So yeah, I get that. But verse 10, Sister Tiffany.
And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short stay.
The question, the only way you can resolve this is how? This is the riddle, right? Identifying where John is. And where is John? He's in 1798, right here. He's in the wilderness. So what are the 5 kingdoms that have fallen in 1798? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, and papal Rome. What beast is? What beast is yet to come? We know that, but we haven't proved it from this chapter. But the United Nations, the most you could say right now probably is that these 10 horns. And this being modern Rome. But the story, the reason you got to see the mystery of iniquity moving from kingdom to kingdom down here is at one level, this is 8 kingdoms. But in reality, what's being taught here is how the deadly wound is healed, how this threefold union comes together. It's about the establishment of the 6th kingdom. These 3 together are the 6th kingdom. This is the false prophet. This is the dragon. This is the beast. So in the story, when you see that this is the 6th kingdom, then they're all the 6th. But when they come together into one entity, what story tells us that we can see them in? Got 2 witnesses to it. It's a classic Bible illustration Revelation 16. You gotta put this Revelation 17 in the context of Revelation 16, and by doing so, this gives you the justification for really focusing in on these 3 kingdoms as the false prophet, the dragon, and the beast. But what I'm saying is that in the story of Elijah, you have the prophets of Baal that are the false prophet. You have Ahab, which is he's the 10 kings. He's the king of the 10 northern tribes, and you have Jezebel. And I'm probably spelling her name wrong. Am I? Okay. So where's your second witness for this? John the Baptist is Salome. So,
the end of Revelation 17 is a witness.
Okay, read the end. Tell us what verses you think give a witness to this.
17:17.
Okay, you're focusing on the 10 kings. I'm not.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm not taking time to define the 10 horns yet, but we'll come to that. What I'm wanting you to see here is that this threefold union is the subject of Bible prophecy that goes from beginning to end. What have we learned from Parminder about the year 538 that corresponds to this? Pardon me?
There was a threefold union between West, East, and then
What was the West?
7 kings.
7 kings. And
Papacy and Byzantine Empire.
this is the papacy. And this is imperial Rome. And the reason I'm putting imperial is because I think imperial has something to do with political, doesn't it? What's imperial mean? Anyway, this is Eastern Rome.
Empire.
Yeah, empire.
Imperial means empire, political structure. Okay. So, what does this tell you? What does this tell you? When did this take place?
Oh, it's 7.
When do you see these three entities on a waymark? 538. This is 538. What is 538?
Sunday law.
It's the Sunday law. So it's telling us this kingdom here comes together when? At the Sunday law. This is here, when you get to here, the United States is ceasing to be the sixth kingdom of Bible prophecy, and it's becoming a component of the threefold union. It's this is where, in Isaiah 23, what happens to Tyre? She's remembered because she's been forgotten from 1798 to here. This here is the Sunday law history. So once you see it's a Sunday law history, what does that tell you about these two histories? That Carmel gets repeated when the Sunday law arrives. But we teach more often than not that Carmel takes place where? Between the midnight cry and the Sunday law. So, but we teach that between the midnight cry and the Sunday law, what's happening in the United States? The image of the beast test. But from the Sunday law to the close of human probation, what's taking place in the world? The image of the beast test. So this marks the final, the Sunday law marks the final fulfillment of Elijah. What does the false prophet provide for the papacy in terms of Revelation 13:2? The power.
Oh, sorry. I see.
What does, in Revelation 13:2, what is provided for the papacy that corresponds with imperial Rome or Herod or Ahab or the dragon? Authority. And why would we think that the papacy would be the seat? Okay, because she's the one that sits on every kingdom,
Yeah.
but when does she sit upon this kingdom?
In the Sunday law.
At the Sunday law in 538, she's taken her seat. She's taken the moral authority or leadership over these two other powers, which are the United Nations and the United States. Okay, so when it came to the structure we talked about the other day, from Daniel 11:40 to verse 43, you see how the deadly wound is healed. Okay, so, and from Revelation 13:11 to verse 15, you see how the deadly wound is healed. Revelation 17 is focusing in on how the deadly wound is healed. It's focusing in on how a church that has been forgotten from 1798 until the Sunday law is to be remembered at the Sunday law. And in Isaiah 23, when she's remembered, what does she do? She sings as a harlot and does what? Let's go to Isaiah 23 just so we can use this as we discuss these things from now on, and you have this in your head. Yeah, I think I heard you say it. Let's. Whose turn to read? Allison, read verse 15 through 17 of Isaiah 23.
And it shall come to pass. Nope.
Yep. Isaiah 23, verse 15.
Okay, and it shall come to pass in that day that Tyre shall be forgotten 70 years according to the days of one king.
What does that mean, Sister Allison? 70 years according to the days of one king. What did Daniel say to Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2? Thou, O king, are the head of gold. So what does that mean about King Nebuchadnezzar? He doesn't represent a king, does he? He represents what? Kingdom. So this is the days of one kingdom. Do you have a kingdom of Bible prophecy that ruled for 70 years? Babylon. Okay, so what was going on during those 70 years? Let's not go there. Keep reading. It's typifying the time period that the sixth kingdom is independent of the papacy from 1798 to the Sunday law. You can start it over because
Okay, and it shall come to pass in that day that Tyre shall be king, but shall be forgotten 70 years, according to the days of one king. After the end of 70 years shall Tyre sing as a harlot.
Okay, stop there for a minute. You know the seven thunders, right? Okay, the seven thunders are the last seven kings of Judah. And the seventh to the last was Manasseh, and we place him in 1798 in terms of Millerite history. And what does his name mean? Forgotten. Okay, she's going to be forgotten in 1798 for 70 years, which is the days of one kingdom. Next verse.
Take a harp, go about the city, thou harlot, thou hast been forgotten. Make sweet melody, sing many songs that thou mayest be remembered. And it shall come to pass after the end of 70 years that the Lord will visit Tyre, and she shall turn to her hire, and shall commit fornication with all the kingdoms of the world upon the face of the earth.
When does she commit fornication with the kings of the earth? When she's remembered down here at the Sunday law. Okay? Right? Why does she commit fornication with him? How does she accomplish that? By false doctrine. She first gets him drunk. This is the process of the mystery of iniquity. Okay? That sailor, he wasn't going to do anything immoral, but he decided he's going to get drunk, and by the end of the night he's committed fornication. Okay, so it's a process, the mystery of iniquity. She first gets him drunk.
How do we marry with the thought that Sunday is the child of papacy?
With other lines of prophecy.
We mark her being remembered at the Sunday law, and also that she sings there, but in verse 16, it's being said that she should sing, therefore she gets remembered. So is she actually starting singing before the Sunday law, like at the midnight cry or something?
That's how I've understood it.
Yeah, I think she starts singing before the midnight cry.
Yeah.
It's always progressive, right?
Yeah, it's progressive. This is the singing. What is the song? No.
That's ours.
How do you define what the song is? Where would you go to define what the song is? The Song of Moses. And okay, the Song of Moses and the Lamb. What does Sister White say that represents for the 144,000? It's their experience. Okay, so her experience has been illustrated throughout history as the mystery of iniquity. Her song is her experience. It's telling us once again how she captures the world. She starts introducing these false doctrines and these false concepts well before the Sunday law and before the midnight cry.
It seems as though she sings this song and lures the Protestants in first to work for her, and then they begin to do the work with her in control to get the other horn conquered and under, you know. So it seems like that song is the history of the United States. At least that's how I've understood it. But the mystery of iniquity is leavening, the church is leavening the state power, working to get them to work together. But
yeah, it's her experience and it's progressive.
That's what I was basically saying earlier, that she actually does all these things prior to Sunday law, but at Sunday law they just culminate in their being exposed.
Yeah, and we agreed with that when we were answering the question from in here. Okay.
Sorry. Who's asking her to do it? Take a hard go about to do this?
God's providential will. Prophetically, He's identified that the deadly wound is going to be healed on several levels. That's His prophetic word.
Question. When it's talking about here in verse 16, going about the city, is that then the city of Rome?
Revelation 17, verse 18. It's your turn to read, my brother. You get to read your own answer. Revelation 17, 18.
Okay, it says, "The woman which thou sawest is the great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth."
So what's a city particularly in the book of Revelation? It's a kingdom. This is the kingdom of modern Babylon, and she's reigning over every kingdom on earth. What's it mean to reign?
When it has power and authority.
Yeah, but I mean, think in terms of an animal. I mean, that's what you're controlling that horse with. She's controlling all of planet Earth. So the city she's going around is not simply the city of Rome, but the city of Rome is the symbol of her capital. Okay, that's the capital of this empire. But she's ruling the whole world. Prophetically, don't we say she took control of the world in 538? But it really wasn't the world. The Americas were outside of that, and China. But this, if anyone has a study Bible, underneath Revelation 17, she has a passage where she quotes verses 13 and 14 of Revelation 17. Verse 13 says, "These have one mind, shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and the King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful." And Sister White quotes those two verses, and then she says, "These have one mind, there will be a universal bond of union." You need this quote because often, particularly the European Adventists, will teach you that this kingdom that she reigns over is the European common market. But the word universal means worldwide. This confederacy is worldwide. It's not just the EU. And besides, there's quite a few more countries in the EU than 10, right? It just don't fit. Okay, we'll deal with the 10 kings tomorrow and then move into probably the 7 churches up there in the corner that I was referencing, and then on our way to Ezekiel 21 to tie it in with Daniel. 2, and before we get done with it, Parminder will be home and he will take up. When does Parminder get home? I think it's next Monday or Tuesday. Not home, he gets here. So, pardon me. Sister Brittany, would you pray for us?
Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning, and I praise you for this study. I ask, Lord, that you can continue to pour out your Spirit upon us as we study present truth, and I ask that you help us to solidify these things in our minds and to keep the times that we're living in ever present in our thoughts, and I pray that you help us to glorify you today in our actions and in our work, and I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.